I got a wreck on Bull, but 277. Also 20 eastbound. I'll be inbound between Two Notch and 277. Platte Springs Road at South Lake Drive, Shakespeare at Faust and Roof, Two Notch Road at Wire Road at Hayes Crossing. Your weather outlook for today, high get up to, let's see, about, well, it's going to be pretty nice. 68 degrees for a high today. Overnight low 54. Friday, 70% chance of rain. That'll move in overnight, 69 for a high. Saturday, 62. Sunday, 58. And then Monday, hey, guess what? Warm again. Very warm. Big warming trend. 72 for a high Monday, 73 on Tuesday, and 78 for your Wednesday. This is Captain Dave, WIS-TV Traffic Center.
Nine o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you. Captain Dave producing on the other side of the glasses. This week is just speeding by. Tomorrow's Friday, then it's off to another weekend, another full weekend of Gamecock sports. As we are truly in perhaps the most chaotic time of the year when it comes to covering and watching sports, quite frankly, where you have this crossover of baseball and basketball. And yeah, you can say to a degree, when we're talking about college sports at least, that the end of the calendar year, November, December, is a little bit chaotic because you do have college football wrapping up its regular season and everything, and then college basketball getting started. But I would say, considering the fact that most of those basketball games, a lot of them non-conference games, it's not as, important as what happens once you get into conference play once the calendar year starts. But now we have, obviously, basketball in full swing as we're getting set for the tournament or tournaments coming up here in a couple of weeks' time. College baseball just getting started, and yes, non-conference series for the most part, but that's only a brief couple of weeks. You do have the Clemson series coming up next week for South Carolina, and then you jump into the thick of conference play in the SEC here very, very soon. So a lot going on this time of year, but that is certainly good from the standpoint of entertainment and viewing, because it always gives you something to watch. And last night we had yet another baseball game, number 5 on the season for South Carolina, and they pulled out another pretty routine victory, 13-3 over Queens last night at Founders Park, this time in 8 innings, once again run ruling them. A couple situations there where they had the bases loaded, weren't able to capitalize on that to have this thing run ruled a little bit earlier, but nevertheless getting another 10-run victory last night over Queens as we continue to see this offense playing at a very high clip through these first 5 games. So your outscoring opponents between the 3-game series against Miami of Ohio, Winthrop on Tuesday night, then Queens last night, 55-10 overall the score through 5 games so far this season, which, I don't think should surprise anyone, especially considering how good this offense was a year ago. I don't think we expected it to take much of a step back, and especially in year number 2 with Monty Lee, having his fingerprints on it, and we've gotten off to a great start, again this season. And when you look at the quality of opponents that they played so far, you're supposed to beat them like this. Like, this is not as a surprise, but it's more of a thing. And I was listening to the SEC D1 Baseball podcast yesterday, and, I think they kind of phrased it really well when talking about these early season non-conference series and non-conference opponents that you play in the midweek. The biggest news coming away from these games is that there is no news. to essentially say that, yes, South Carolina beat Queens by 10 runs in 8 innings, the third straight run rule game. That's exactly the kind of things that we're supposed to be saying about a team like South Carolina this early on in the season. But when you do kind of pick apart some of the finer details of these games, you do have a lot of good things to glean from it, not just saying, well, they just beat an opponent the way they're supposed to beat them and move on to the next one. One thing that I look at, and last night, South Carolina was able to draw 15 walks, and that is 59 through 5 games. So, and this goes back to Monty Lee as well, and the effect that he's had on this program with hitting the past 2 seasons now is good plate discipline. Going up there, making sure you are not chasing bad pitches, making sure you're taking your bases when you can. And again, when you taking these walks, put more guys on base as you get those hits, that obviously, ends up leading to, to more runs. So again, a great start offensively for South Carolina, going to 5-0 on the season. And again, third straight run rule game last night against Queens. Playing a team like that, especially in a midweek, your second midweek game in a row, or second day of midweek games in a row, it gives you the opportunity to shift your lineup around a little bit. And we saw the most change in the lineup last night than we'd seen so far this season, and that was highlighted by Ryan Bakes, very highly touted freshman, getting an opportunity to start at catcher last night. He's somebody that coming into the season, we'd heard a lot of conversation about, read the reports of what he'd been doing in the scrimmages, somebody that have a serious impact on this team in some way this year, factoring into the rotation of starters in the catcher spot, especially when you have the opportunity to move some guys around there and do a couple of different things. They ended up not playing Cassis last night, moved Cole Messina over to first base as opposed to his usual catching. So again, gave Ryan Bakes the opportunity to come in there and play at that catcher spot. He ends up going 3 for 4 with 3 RBIs. So I can't think of a better first start in a college career than doing that for Ryan Bakes. So again, last night was an opportunity to see some of these guys that maybe you haven't gotten as much of a chance to see early on this season so far. And again, with how good we expect South Carolina to be, hopefully you'll see a lot of these guys, especially through these first couple weeks of the season, get a good amount of playing time. And last night, this will be cut number 5 here, Dave. Coach Kingston talked about the benefit of being able to get a lot of guys on the field in a game like this. Let's see here. Got it? Cut number 5? Maybe. One more time. No?
Yeah, it's important.
Oh, there it is.
You want to continue to give guys opportunities. Obviously, they've all had opportunities since August to show us who should be in the lineup and who should get the most playing time. So it's good when you also get into the season, when you have some games where you get some length score-wise, to get them in the game and see how they look when the lights are on for real. So got a lot of guys in the game tonight, and I'm happy we were able to do that.
This is the point where you're really truly learning a lot about your team. It's great to look at the scrimmages and glean a little bit from that, but the familiarity of playing against your own teammates on a day in, day out basis can skew perception of things a little bit. So now the fact you're actually playing in legitimate games does give you a little bit of a better understanding of what you have on your roster and what this team's going to be like as you get into the thick of conference play here in a couple weeks. And I think that there is the series against Belmont this weekend, have another midweek against Gardner-Webb next Tuesday. Then you get Clemson coming into town on Friday, playing at Segra on Saturday, and then wrapping up the series in the Upstate at Clemson on Sunday. That's, as it always is, the big test in the non-conference to really gauge where you're at and what you need to improve on, what you need to be better at, what you're really good at as you get set for conference play middle of March, as you go on the road to Oxford for that first series. So, I would fully expect South Carolina to continue to handle their business against the likes of Belmont and Gardner-Webb over these next couple of days. And then when Clemson comes to town again, as I said, next weekend, you're looking like, okay, well, here's where we are. Here's what we kind of need to improve on. And it just serves as an overall good litmus test for, for where this program's at early on in the season. And look, baseball's an ebb and flow sport. You're going to see things be good at the beginning of the year that, dip the middle of the year, may come back at the end of the season and vice versa. That's just the nature of the sport itself. But feeling good about the offense, also feeling good about the pitching so far this year. We've seen through the first 5 games, you had your weekend rotation of Jones, Eskew, and Kimball all do solidly. Obviously, Kimball started what ended up being the staff no-hitter on Sunday. He had a good game out of Eddie Copper on Tuesday night, rebounding from his rough first outing coming out of the bullpen on Friday against Miami of Ohio. And last night, and a lot of anticipation for Matthew Becker and what he was going to be like in his first start. Play some back-to-back cuts here. I'll get cut number 6 here first, Dave. This will be Becker talking about his start, and then we'll roll right into cut number 3 with Kingston giving his thoughts on what he saw out of Matthew Becker.
I felt pretty good. Felt really normal, back to normal for the first time in a while, and stuff felt pretty good too.
Yeah, I thought it was very similar to what Roman did, right? 5 strikeouts in 2 innings, 40, a little bit more than 40 pitches. So I thought that was a really good sign. I thought the stuff was good. He looked a little rusty early on, but I thought once he settled in, he looked really good.
Final numbers for Matthew Becker last night does go the 2 innings, much like Roman Kimball did the other day, being on that pitch count. Gave up 2 hits, no runs, walked 1, struck out 5, facing 10 batters, and only threw 45 pitches. Kimball threw 40 on Sunday. So about an ideal scenario that you would want out of a guy like that in this, kind of testing the waters type of start, considering the fact that he just strained his lat the previous Sunday in a scrimmage. And when you talk about shoulder issues with especially pitchers, you can never be too careful with with those kind of things. So we'll kind of see what the ultimate plan is for working Becker back up to full strength. Same thing with Roman Kimball. And last night, Coach Kingston did also say that Jones, Eskew, and Kimball would be the starting 3 for this upcoming weekend series against Belmont. So, we'll see how much of a leash is still on Roman Kimball in his start, and we'll see what they decide to do with Matthew Becker, I imagine in the midweek, once again next week, maybe against the likes of Gardner-Webb before, again, that very daunting Clemson series where you, want to roll out what I imagine you're hoping your weekend rotation is going to be once you get into conference play, and Matthew Becker, if he's back to full strength by then, is certainly somebody that could factor into that, because there was the debate on if it was going to be Kimball or Becker getting the Sunday start initially before those 2 guys even got hurt. So once Becker does get back to full strength, I'll be interested to see what they ultimately decide to do with him as far as where he slots in as a starter for the rest of the season. But again, somebody that you expect a lot of good things out of this year, and got off to a solid start, as solid of a start as you can in a limited capacity from last night. Again, Belmont coming up this weekend. They're actually not off to a bad start, 4-1 to start the season. Took a series against Eastern Michigan this past weekend in the season opener. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when Belmont comes to town. First game coming up Friday at 4 o'clock right here on the Game. Again, I was at Daytona on Monday for the Daytona 500, and as we did last year through the NASCAR playoffs, Jen Jensen going to jump in with me in the next segment, and we will talk all things racing, what we saw from the Daytona 500 and what we are looking forward to this upcoming weekend with race number 2 at Atlanta. Real quick reminder, you can always watch us on the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass. Just go online to youtube.com, search the Game TV, subscribe to us, hit the bell icon, stay notified anytime we upload or do a live. You can also download the 1075 The Game app, and you can stream us wherever you go. Again, Racing Talk with Jen Jensen coming up next here on the Extra Point on the Game.
Byron. William Byron at 26 years old. You've worked so hard in such a short period of time. How does Daytona 500 champion sound to you right now?
It sounds really damn good. It's just thanks to an awesome crowd coming out. I have so many emotions. Obviously, hate what happened on the backstretch. I just got pushed and got sideways, but just so proud of this team, whole Exalta team, 40th anniversary to the day on Monday. So just extremely blessed and thankful for all the opportunities, and yeah, we just want to keep it going. We have a lot to prove this year, and this is a good start, obviously. And Daytona 500, it's freaking awesome. Let's go.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on this Thursday morning. That was on Monday, very late in the day on Monday. There, Fox Sports' Jamie Little interviewing Daytona 500 winner William Byron, who is rolling along pretty nicely in his career so far. Had a very great year last year, and now starting off the season very well with that Daytona 500 victory. Jen Jensen now joining me in studio as we get our conversation of racing started back up once again weekly. Now that you are back to full health, thankfully, couldn't get you in here after the Clash because you were out for a few days.
A little under the weather. All good now.
I say feeling good for the start of the season, and we had to wait a day for it, but we got treated to a very entertaining Daytona 500.
It really was, and what a great day for Hendrick, celebrating the 40th anniversary, since their first race, to come in first and second. I mean, it doesn't get much better, much more storybook than that.
My dad, I talked to him the next day after the race, and he asked me, he's like, when Jimmy and Jeff were in the 24 and the 48, how many times did they finish 1-2? And I didn't have the exact number, but I know it was quite a number of times. So now you kind of have this new generation of talent there with, William Byron and Alex Bowman in those respective cars. And I believe that's the first time that those two have finished 1-2 together, but likely won't be the last.
I'm thinking no. It's a good team. They're very strong.
And for Alex Bowman, who had the tough year last year, had the back injury and just wasn't the same when he came back, he and Chase Elliott ended up missing the playoffs. It's kind of one of those things. I think back to like when Elliott Sadler lost the 09 Daytona 500 because it rained, the caution came out when he was leading, 200 yards before that or whatever. If that caution comes out, a second or two later, Alex Bowman wins the Daytona 500, and I think that's something that's going to haunt him for a long time until maybe he inevitably gets his own Daytona 500.
I would think so. Yeah, it's funny, boy. In this industry, split second makes all the difference in the world. And I know there was some talk at first, like when did the yellow come out and all that,
Right.
But everything's good, legitimate winner in William Byron.
And for William Byron, his first couple of years, and this happens with just about everybody that, it rockets through the ranks of the Truck Series, the Xfinity Series, winning those, or not winning the Truck Series championship, winning the Xfinity Series championship, comes into the Cup, struggles for a couple years, kind of getting up to speed, finally wins one race, finally wins two races, and last year just finally explodes. 6 wins, leads the series, makes the Final Four, doesn't win the championship, but just rides this wave of momentum, and now starts off the year with the biggest win of his career in the Daytona 500.
And he started in iRacing.
That's right.
That's, I think, my favorite part of the story. And I heard his parents interviewed, and I think it might have been on that Netflix series where they were just talking about how, he was kind of good at this whole iRacing thing. So, I mean, he really never had his backside in a car early on, where he learned everything initially from iRacing. It's crazy. And now to be where he is now with his success, it's incredible.
I'd be interested to know how many new iRacing subscriptions have come in this week alone, because I can't think of a better advertisement.
Right.
Like literally a guy that started his career on a computer with iRacing. It's simulator. It's not a video game. Let's not get it misconstrued there. There's a difference between
but certainly
doing
not
that
the level of simulator what they have at different shops
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
For sure. And I imagine there's a lot of people around the country like, well, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. Let me go out there and try my hand at it. And so great advertisement there for iRacing and great. Look, I said this as somebody that grew up a Jeff Gordon fan. I'll never complain about seeing the 24 win. That's now 2 Cup races I've seen William Byron win, going back to the Goodyear 400 last year at Darlington, and now the
Good luck charm for him.
Yeah, my wife, the only 2 Cup races she's ever been to, that race at Darlington, now the Daytona 500, both won by Willie B.
Wow, she's got to feel like she's pretty charmed.
Well, and it's pretty funny. So she's become a big Ross Chastain fan.
Okay.
And at Darlington last year is when he and Larson had their run in while they were both fighting for the lead, and then he's going for it on the last lap, coming to the white flag, and he and Austin Cindric tangle, and end up kind of sparking
the next one,
the next big one that that ended up kind of ending the race there. But I give him props. He's going for it. I get it. And
Yep.
he legitimately had one of the better cars at the end of the race. Ford and Toyota all week had been the fastest. Joey Logano sits on the pole. Toyota sweeps the duels. And I felt like Logano probably had the best car all day on Sunday, ended up leading 40 some odd laps, gets caught up in the big one with about 12 to go, and takes him out. And from then, it just kind of played from the number standpoint into the Chevy's hand there at the end of the race.
Yep, it absolutely did, and it was fun to see. I know there was some talk before everything especially with the Ford, as far as the oh my gosh, what are they calling it? The
Dark Horse.
Thank you, the
Yep.
Dark Horse. As to what that was going to do and how that was going to perform. And so it was kind of fun to watch that. But yeah, everything really just played into the Chevy's hands by the end of the race.
As far as the race itself, I thought overall really good. Now, I was watching this from the stands. I've gone back the past couple of days and, kind of watched the broadcast back piece by piece. And overall, I think especially with the next-gen car, which has struggled at times on super speedways, I thought we got treated to a very good race from start to finish. I know there was conversation coming away from it about the fuel saving because there were periods in the middle of the stages where they were blowing it down. They were 3-4 seconds off the pace of how they would normally be running. I just think that's, they're running the race essentially. They're playing within the sandbox they're given. Didn't really have a problem with that. And even in the stands, that's not something you specifically noticed as much. I know NASCAR's kind of looking into that, but as far as the quality of the race itself, I thought it was great.
I really thought it was too. And I kind of mentioned when we were talking to Josh Harris from Darlington Raceway just a few minutes ago, the fact that there were so many other teams, like the smaller teams, that seemed to do really well by the end of it. They kept themselves clean during the race. And, in the top 10, you had Colleague Racing, you had 2 from Legacy Motorsports, 2311, Spire. And I was really happy to see Stuart Haas represented 9th and 10th. So that was good because I know there's a lot going on with that team right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So a good kind of mix. And again, when you had the wreck there with about 12 to go, that kind of ended up mixing things up there. But,
Standard for Daytona.
Standard for Daytona.
So you just have to you just really need to keep your equipment clean to be there available at the finish.
But in a weird way, and again, I'm a Hendrick Motorsports fan, so I was glad to see William Byron win. But I'm also glad that we see a Daytona 500 winner where I can legitimately say, I think that guy has a shot at the championship. Because when you look at the past 3 years, go back to last year with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Michael McDowell the year before, Austin Cindric the year before that. No disrespect to those guys, but them winning the Daytona 500, I'm like, that's great for them. And that ended up being the only race those guys won the rest of the year. When I kind of think of quintessential great moments in the Daytona 500, the Earnhardts, the Dale Juniors, the Jeff Gordons, like, you want your most prestigious race to be won by somebody that you can say, wow, this guy might end the season with a championship
That's
as well.
a great point.
And what a year that could be. And a guy like William Byron gives you a chance to do that.
Yep. No, I agree. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but that's true. And
that's my opinion.
I think it's fun. I love the fact that somebody can get into the playoffs by winning the race, to get into, the second half of the season by winning the race. That's great. And, but you're right. Some of those are not like Stenhouse. Is he really going to compete for the championship?
No.
Probably not.
No. And we
I don't
knew
think that's in his cards.
And we knew that when he won the race here. Great for him. Obviously, very cool moment. But you look at a guy like William Byron and say, wow, he could legitimately be a championship contender.
Start to finish.
One observation. I have a lot of observations from the race itself that we don't have time to completely dive into today. But one observation from this, and I want to get your perspective from the Indianapolis 500 front, because that's a race that you've been to. I've been to tons of races in my life. Atlanta, Talladega, Darlington more recently. And every race has a certain feel to it. Daytona was a different level. The pre-race stuff alone. I talked about the Blue Angels yesterday. The Rock was there and gave the command. And one thing that really stuck out to me, there was about a 10-minute window between the end of the anthem and the command to fire engines. And the the aura in the air for those 10 minutes of nothing that just ramped up the intensity before the race started was unlike anything I'd ever felt before. It just had and again, it's the biggest race of the year. It just had this extra special feel to it that I recommend anybody, if you're even remotely a race fan, go experience at least once.
Yeah, when it comes to a super race like that, there's so much buildup. I mean, with the 500, they have, for hours prior, there are things going on. There's parades on the track and there's hot laps and all kinds of different things that are happening. And yeah, it is entertaining. It's worth going before the show, before the race itself. You need to get there a couple hours early to experience all of it because there is just something there.
Right. And again, Monday, it rained on Sunday, so we had to push it to Monday, and we ended up having great weather for the race on Monday, which was fantastic. But, you know, there was 100,000 some odd people there, and, you know, the midway was packed, and, you know, we can kind of be preconceived to a lot of negativity when it comes to NASCAR. Oh, it's not as popular as it was 20 years ago, and it's not the same, and it's dying, as people like to say. But I go to a race like I did on Monday, and I'm like, this sport's in a good place. It's very healthy, a lot of fan interest, a lot of people, and you have casual fans that go to every single race, but a lot of people very invested in what's going on. They understand the ins and outs, and that was really cool to see on Monday as well.
I'm so glad you get to go. That was exciting.
I got to go back now. I'm itching to go back. It was a fantastic experience. I'm looking forward to being at Darlington here in a couple months for for Throwback Weekend, but fantastic way to start off the year.
Yep. 100%. Well, good. It was a great race, and I'm looking forward to coming up to Atlanta.
Absolutely. So Atlanta coming up this weekend, and we'll break all that down with you next week. So glad we got these recurring segments back in here, and again, we'll be doing this every week, either on Wednesday or Thursday, just kind of depending on how the week shakes out.
Yep.
Coming up next, though, going to dive into more of college football, an expanded college football playoff again. We'll discuss that next here on the Extra Point here on the Game.
My favorite, and I don't remember who the...
Do have some rain coming in this upcoming weekend, and if you experience any heavy rain from a storm, you could end up having some water in your crawl space. And high humidity and condensation in that crawl space from the water can create an environment for mold, mildew, and pests, including things like termites. The moisture can also lead to wood rot and floor joist problems. Musty smells or awful odors that can come from the mold, mildew in your crawl space can cause serious health issues for you and your family in your home, like runny nose, itchy eyes, or coughs, because up to half the air that you breathe comes from that crawl space. If you're experiencing any of these issues, any of them at all, you need to check out our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Head online to cantycanfixit.com. They'll send out a professional to check out your crawl space and make sure they get it in good working order for you and your family to live comfortably. Again, our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist. Schedule an appointment online at cantycanfixit.com. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on this Thursday morning. Thanks to Jen Jits for hanging out with me a little bit, talking some racing, which, again, we'll do each and every week. Before we get into the football conversation, I want to remind you about the Rivalry Friday ticket giveaway. If you want to see the Gamecocks take on the Clemson Tigers coming up next Friday at Founders Park, all you got to do is go to YouTube, go to the Game TV, subscribe to us, and then go to 1075thegame.com and fill out the form for your chance to win. Hit submit. You get a chance to win. Again, the Rivalry Friday ticket giveaway. Subscribe to us on YouTube and then head it over to 1075thegame.com and fill out the form for your chance to win. One thing that always bothers me, I guess you could call this a pet peeve of mine, is anytime I go into a grocery store and they're always a holiday ahead. Do you know what I mean? So in the lead up to Valentine's Day, you go to Walmart and you see stuff for Easter. Or, this is the worst offender here, when you're in a store in October and they've got Christmas stuff out. It's like, well, wait a minute. We still got Halloween and Thanksgiving before we get to Christmas. Don't jump 2 steps ahead. Let's deal with the task at hand. Let's get through whatever holiday's next, and then we'll worry about the candy and the flowers and the cards and all that kind of stuff for the following holiday. Stop getting so far ahead of yourself. The college football playoff is getting really far ahead of itself. On Tuesday, 2 days ago, we finally got confirmation on the 12-team format that we're going to be using for 2024 and 2025, being the 5-7 model, which is something that we fully expected was going to happen. We just had to wait for the leaders to officially give the thumbs up on it being implemented for this upcoming season. So we have not even started. We're not even close to starting the season for the first year of the 12-team playoff format. And yesterday in Dallas, the leaders met, and they are already pushing for an expanded playoff in 2026, this expanded playoff being 14 teams. So again, we don't even know what the 12-team college football playoff is going to look like or going to feel like, and we're already pushing for more teams to be in it. And it's really hard, in my opinion, to have an opinion on this, quite frankly, because I don't even know what the 12-team playoff is going to look like. I don't know what the, as I talk about quite a bit, the unintended consequences of expanding it once again are going to look like. So to sit here and say, well, 14, it's good, it's bad, I don't really know, because it's really hard to tell. But this seems to be the direction that college football is going. Whether you like it or not, the playoffs are never going to shrink. They're only going to expand. I imagine we're going to get to 16 at some point in time. Why not go ahead and do it now? If that's what you're really trying to push for, why not go ahead? And you ask the question, well, why would they jump to 14? What more does that add to the college football playoff that 12 doesn't? Well, I'll tell you. It adds 2 more games to the opening round. That is another roughly 8 hours worth of television, 8 hours worth of ad revenue, TV time, all that kind of stuff, which, of course, equates to a lot more money for ESPN, who just signed another lucrative deal with the college football playoff to continue to broadcast the games through 2031. At the end of the day, that's why all these things are done. Everything about the sport and sports in general, but college football, especially when you talk about realignment and all that kind of stuff, it all boils down to money. So ESPN sees an opportunity to generate more money, they're going to do that. The college football playoff sees an opportunity to generate more money, they're going to do that, which is why we're pushing potentially for an expanded 12-team playoff. So you ask, how would this work? Now, again, these are preliminary discussions. We don't have official word confirmation on anything like this just yet, but the fact that it's being talked about, I can go ahead and guarantee you it's going to happen to some degree. And the word is, from these conversations in Dallas, is it's going to be an expanded field of automatic qualifiers. Now, when we go back to the SEC and the Big Ten having this collaboration as of late, I've been somebody that said I feel like their push with the college football playoff beyond 2025 would be to eliminate automatic qualifiers, because that would in turn benefit those 2 leagues the most, because, and more often than not, those 2 leagues are going to have multiple teams already in the top 12 in the college football playoff rankings, where they can truly dominate the field. Well, the word around this is, and this is according to Yahoo Sports and Ross Dellinger, that the Big Ten is pushing for expanded automatic qualifiers for their conference to be at 4, which I imagine would probably be a very similar number to the SEC as well. So instead of, I guess, taking the chance on going a true 1 through 12 format, you give yourself 4 automatic slots. And again, between the two power conferences, they would accomplish more than half the playoff field. And then we'll allow the ACC or the Big 12 to get 2 slots in. We'll throw a bone to the ACC, to the Group 5 as well, so they can be still represented. But it's an opportunity for the SEC and the Big 10 to continue to wield their power. Because when you think about it, the SEC has 16 teams, the Big 10 has 18 teams. That's 34 teams between those 2 leagues. And I can guarantee you more often than not, the national champion is probably going to come from one of those 2 leagues. In fact, I'd be willing to bet in the first 10 years of, if we go to this 14-team format, I'd be willing to bet 90% of those championships are going to come from those 2 leagues. We may have one outlier from the ACC, or maybe a Big 12 team catches fire or something like that. But I'd be willing to bet your champions routinely coming from the SEC and the Big 10. The 2 most powerful leagues in college football. They're going to push, if they're going to push for something like this, it's going to be something that's going to benefit them more. And the ACC and the Big 12, they'll be happy to be included. Maybe with 2 automatic qualifying spots. As I mentioned, you still throw a bone to the Group of 5 more likely than not. So if you do that, you have 4 teams locked in from the SEC, 4 teams locked in for the Big 10, 2 teams from the ACC, 2 teams from the Big 12, 1 Group of 5. That's 13 spots right there. I guess at that point in time, you'd just have a general at-large bid for whatever highest remaining team's not in, or Notre Dame. I don't know. There's a lot more questions than answers when it comes to this, and that's kind of the why it's so hard to formulate an opinion on what this is going to be, because it's, again, so early. But again, we don't even know what the 12-team playoff is going to look like. We have no gauge, no litmus test for how a playoff with 8 more teams is going to look or feel compared to the 4 that we've done. At least when you go from the BCS format of having, hey, you got 2 teams that go play for the national championship, to now you have 4 teams playing for the opportunity to go to the national championship. That's a little bit easier to swallow. But now we're going from 4 to 12, and you're encompassing multiple rounds into that, and then theoretically you're going to 2 more in 2026 where you only have 2 buys. It's a lot to take in. And again, something we just don't have a good general gauge of quite yet. A lot more to unpack from this. I want to continue this conversation on the other side because, and I know a lot of you who are traditional college football fans are probably very much against this. I will say there's one caveat to this potential change in 2026 that you might actually be interested in. I'll tell you about that coming up. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you on your Thursday morning here on The Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head with you here on your Thursday morning. Before we get back into the college football playoff conversation, reminder, you can go online to 1075thegame.com, register for your chance to win the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway, just like the Laura Lisa touchdown contest that we had back in football season. Very similar here. $25 getting added to the pot every single game. And when a Gamecock finally hits a Grand Slam, you could win the cash prize from Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. Pot currently sitting at $125 now through 5 games. So if you register, somebody hits a Grand Slam on Friday night against Belmont, guess what? $125 doesn't happen. More goes into the pot, and it continues to grow as the season goes along. So again, 1075thegame.com for the Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union Grand Slam giveaway. Talking about this proposal for a 14-team college football playoff, which again is just a discussion with the leaders of the college football playoff in Dallas yesterday. If they're talking about it, guess what? It's probably going to happen because at the end of the day, it leads to more money. And a lot of people very much opposed to this, which I understand. Like I said, I can't truly have a feeling on this because I don't even know what a 12-team playoff looks like. We're talking about such a seismic shift of adding 8 to possibly 10 more teams in the next couple of years, as well as multiple rounds, having games at home sites in the first round, multiple bowl games for teams, going from quarters to semifinals, playing the national championship in the middle of January. Like, it's a lot of new that we just don't know how to feel about yet because we haven't gotten there. So this conversation about expanding to 14 has a lot of thoughts and feelings from it that we just don't know yet, and we'll have to wait until we get there. But I do look at this, and this was pointed out by Ross Dellinger of Yahoo Sports in his write-up of this yesterday, what this could theoretically do. You have a 14-team playoff with pretty much all automatic qualifiers. It could take a lot of the subjectivity out of it. The big controversy of this year's college football playoff was the exclusion of Florida State, who was an undefeated ACC champion, Power 5 institution, all that stuff. Something that had never been left out of the college football playoff before, and they got left out in favor of technically Alabama, but I think it was technically Alabama and Texas, because Texas beating Alabama. I think the committee would have much rather had Alabama in over Texas, but you can't put in Alabama without putting in Texas. So that meant Florida State, sorry, unfortunately, you're on the outside looking in. So with this potential 14-team playoff where 13 of those spots are automatic qualifiers, well, guess what? That probably takes it out of the committee's hands to where instead of saying, okay, well, let's take these ranked teams, or for the 12-team playoff, you have the 4 automatic qualifiers by conference champion, and then you fill in the rest with the respective rankings. That pretty much takes it out of the hands of the committee now, where you say, okay, instead of going off committee rankings, we're just going to go off conference standings, where Georgia, Alabama, Missouri and Ole Miss were the top 4 teams in the SEC this year. So all 4 of those will go to the college football playoff. Doesn't matter about the rankings, any of that stuff. If you're the top 4 in your respective conference, guess what? You're in the playoffs, or depending on however many AQs your conference has. And then, now, yes, the committee's vote and rankings would still factor in to got the top 2 seeds in the first round buys, which, again, is likely going to come down to the ACC and the Big Ten more often than not. But and then whatever the 14th spot theoretically that goes to an at-large, that also matters. But for the most part, you're taking out the subjectivity, the human element, the human error of the committee out of deciding who's in the college football playoff. That does intrigue me. I'm not here saying I love the idea of 14 teams playing for the college football playoff national championship, but I am intrigued by the idea of taking some of the subjectivity out of it by not having the committee as involved as much. That opens up a whole nother can of worms of, well, what the heck do conference championships mean? Because as I mentioned, in a theoretical 14 playoff this year, Georgia and Alabama both get in. Michigan and Iowa both get in. Florida State and Louisville both get in. Texas and Oklahoma State both get in. So what's the point of playing those games? Do we get rid of them? Because at least in the 12-team playoff, winning your conference championship guarantees you, at least in a Power 4 conference, a first-round bye. Well, that doesn't exist in a 14-team playoff with only 2 teams getting byes. And again, there's really no penalty to losing the game because you're still in the playoff no matter what. Now, the difference could be between playing a home game or a neutral site or a road game in the first round of the playoffs, but that's pretty much it. You know, conference championships used to have a lot of depth and meaning to them. They were the semifinals before the semifinals in a lot of cases. And now they just become, I don't even know what. Meaningless, I guess. I mean, you're playing for a trophy, but would I rather play in that extra game for maybe the possibility of getting a bye, or would I rather have an extra week of rest? Say, play the last game of the regular season and not have to worry about another game until the weekend before Christmas. That sounds better to me. Again, there's a lot to unpack from this. This is just the beginning of this conversation. We'll get into more of this as the day goes along, and for rainy days as well. The old school nature of college football, the college football that we've come to know and love over the years, is changing fast. And buckle up, because it's going to be quite a ride. That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Garnet Trust Hour. Wes Mitchell will jump in here with me. We'll maybe bring this point up a little bit later on as well. Also, intern Joe going to join us, talk some baseball and basketball as well. That's all coming up here on The Game.